Military coups have played a major role in Africa's political history. A coup happens when the military removes a civilian government and takes control of the states. Since independence, Africa has experienced dozens of such takeovers, more than any other region in the world. After colonial rule ended, many new African nations faced weak institutions, economic pressure, and political tension. In these moments, the military often stepped in, claiming to restore stability or fight corruption. The first major coup of the 1960s in Ghana, Nigeria, and Congo created a pattern. Soldiers replaced politicians, and promises of a reform quickly turned into long periods of military rule. Foreign interference during the Cold War worsened the situation, especially in Central Africa, where global powers backed rival factions for strategic gains. By the 1990s, democratic movements pushed many military governments out of power. Elections returned, and hopes for stability grew. However, in recent years, coups have emerged in parts of West Africa and Central Africa. Insecurity, poverty, and public frustration have once again weakened civilian governments. While some citizens initially support military takeovers, history shows that coups rarely solve deep political problems. Instead, they delay development and weaken democracy. Africa's future depends on strong institutions, accountable leadership, and peaceful transition of power, not military force. Welcome once again. Today we talk about the surge and military takeovers in Africa. And clearly, the surge in military takeover has become a worrisome event that has bedeviled the space in Africa and threatened the existence of democracy. But what exactly can we say is the cause of military coup currently going on in parts of West Africa? Is it a case of greed on the part of the politicians? Is it a case of bad leadership? Are the people on the side of the military takeovers? Will it do well for democracy? We'll find out in this discussion. It could be a debate, it could be a discussion. Find out when we come back. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome once again. We'll go straight to the discussion. What do you think is the reason for the military takeovers currently going on in Africa, especially in parts of West Africa? What is your perspective?
Okay, thank you for really having me. Good day to our viewers. I think we should be worried. That's where I want to start about these military coups. We thought it is over. Why we should be worried is that I think a particular politician in Nigeria, I don't want to mention his details, for some reason said that you don't jump into a window. You don't jump from a window into a house to begin to fix the house. If you must fix a house, you have to come through the door. And I think this is the issue. We didn't give you the mandate. People have not said come and rule about us. On your own you walk and you begin to say you are coming to liberate the society. You are not liberating the society with the consent of majority of the people. Now, having said that, the real cause of the coup in Africa, I heard your intro, very brilliant and wonderful, is that one, weak institutions and greed, the quest to retain power at all costs. You can also say there is international dimension to it. These are the things I think that are principally, causing this return of the military back to power in most countries in Africa.
Okay, if I may come in here, you mentioned quite a lot of things. You said something about greed to hold on to power and we talked about coming through the window. So in this case, in these two scenarios you pointed out, the first one you said coming to the house through the window. I think you're referring to the military this time.
Yeah.
That is to say, you do not support military coup.
No.
And then you mentioned something about hate holding on to power.
Yeah.
Is this referring to the politicians or the same military who has come through the window to,
I think there's a point out that we have to understand. What we have in most African countries today are people who are putting on suit and agbada and behaving like the military guys. Okay? The trends you find in a normal military coup, you begin to find it. Only recently in Nigeria, we're talking about the tax law being forged. A typical example of what the military coup looks like, where the executive begin to make laws in terms of decree, because that's what happened in the military government. Okay? We see situations where police harass the press. We need to look at the quality of our elections. For me, and I could be wrong, an election leader and a coup plotter, they are doing the same thing. Because the goal is the same. Imposing leadership on the people without their consent. That is trying to force yourself on the people. Exactly the same thing those military guys do. So this is it. When those leaders do not respect the institutions, when they do the wrong things, most of my contemporaries will begin to admire military junta. They will think that military coup is the way to go. Of course, it is not the way to go. You and I are seated here talking about things, criticizing sometimes. It is because there is democracy.
But if I may come in again,
okay.
You have said military coup is not the way to go.
Yes.
But at the same time, you pointed out the fact that some of these politicians, the government, have behaved in a military-like manner. So what it also means is that these same governments are not doing well. So if you are against the government, you are against the military, where do you stand?
Yes, I like this your question. Where I stand is this. Let me tell you what it looks like. It's like a child that, has a malaria. Instead of giving that child anti-malaria medication, you go and begin to administer anti-cancer medication for the child. That is what it looks like. Those politicians are not doing the right thing, granted. But we, the people, have not truly exercised our power on them. Let me keep it told. It is when those leaders close up the space, and then nobody will take over power in a believable, destroy the institutions really means well for the people. Because when you are destroying the institution, it means you don't want to be held accountable for the things you do. And democracy involves transparency and accountability.
That is to say that you are neither for the military nor for the government.
No. That's not my point. My point is this. I am not supporting the way some African leaders are going about this democracy. We have seen even in America that democracy could be vulnerable. This democracy has to be protected. Now let me explain this thing further in a scholarly way, maybe to help you to appreciate. This thing we talk about dividends of democracy so much. Dividends of democracy are actually intangible. Because if somebody tells you that he's giving dividends of democracy by constructing roads, building bridges, building hospitals, the military must also do those things. We can't talk about the building and construction of many things that happened in Abuja without. It was a military government in Nigeria that developed the Federal Capital Territory. So, does it mean that military government gave Nigeria's dividends of democracy? It cannot be. You cannot discuss the development in South Africa without the apartheid. You cannot also talk about the development of Germany without the Nazarites. So, the Nazists. Does that mean that they were giving the people dividends of democracy? So my point here is that true dividends of democracy are actually intangible. And this is clearly what the operators of this democracy in Africa have refused to do. Have actually allow the people to feel and enjoy. Until that happens, many of our people will not appreciate this democracy. My point is that the military junta or military government is not the way to go. It is not something to consider at all, but we must rally around, pressure operators of this democracy in Africa to do the right thing so that this democracy will grow. So that when you are elected and the people no longer want you, they can only show you the way out.
But you can agree with me, you will agree with me that various countries like Niger and of course Burkina Faso, have experienced this same military takeover. I want to use Burkina Faso as a case study.
Okay.
Ibrahim Traore, the captain who took over the democratically elected government of Burkina Faso, is by far looking like a hero in his country. And there's hardly any story or bad negative feedback from the people with regards to him taking over the government. He has been doing quite well. And if you said something about democracy, the dividend of democracy being intangible, what then is the dividend of democracy? Infrastructure and other rights the government should may afford to the people. These are dividends of democracy. So if the military can afford to give these things to the people, so what difference does it make? Remember, I am citing the example of Burkina Faso because right now the rhetoric out there is that he's a hero of that nation.
Let me start with the two dividends of democracy. Two dividends of democracy is rule of law, respect for human rights, an independent judiciary, due process, freedom of the press, accountability and transparency. Let me tell you, it is when accountability and transparency is enthroned, when the institutions are strong, you will find out that the people will be the ones demanding for roads. It is not when you go into government you begin to argue that a bridge must be here. It is not your funds. You are not spending private funds. You are spending the public funds, and those funds belong to the people. And therefore, it is the people that decide how that fund will be spent actually through their legislature. That's one of the reasons why the executive is not given the power to appropriate public funds. It is at appropriation that the people through their representative will say, Your Excellency, we don't need bridge here, we think this will be better. But let me go to Burkina Faso. You see, what is going on in Burkina Faso is a well-coordinated PR. Okay? Because, let me say and say it again, one of the aspects of democracy, one of the things democracy brings to the table is that it makes the people the boss of their leaders. It is the people that employ their leaders. It is not the leaders that employ the people. The leaders are not boss over the people. Okay? I think it was Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the US, who said that the power exercised by a president or a leader seems to be powerful, but it is the power of the people that is the most powerful, because the power the leader is exercising is donated to him by the people through an election. That's what ought to be. The challenge we have in Africa, we have to say it, is that what we were told, or what our ancestors and forebears were told, hitherto or prior to the time we started embracing this democracy once again in the 90s, was that this democracy was going to solve our problem, help our economy, help us in so many areas. And the reality is not happening. Then you see, there's no country in the world that is 100% practicing this democracy perfectly. That's where the judiciary also come to play a role. Okay? But our situation in Africa is worse. If you look at democratic, what we call the democratic index or democracy index, okay, many countries in Africa are not there. There are, I think, about 4 democracy index. Many countries in Africa are choked up. They are not, you know that, or you may not know that, in before 90s, or in the 90s, or prior to the 90s, there were many terminologies that were in existence, but they were not popular. Those terminologies became popular the moment Africa started practicing democracy. Things like minimalistic democracy. Minimalistic democracy just means the minimum. conducting election.
Well, if I leave you, you will go on and on and on and explain. But let's drive it home. Let's bring it back home.
Okay.
Recently, the president, the commander-in-chief, a democratically elected president, installed a retired military officer,
a quasi-military administrator.
Installed a retired military officer as administrator of the state, thereby, sidelining democratically elected government officials. Is that akin to a military coup, or what do we call it? Is it okay? And then you mentioned something about the courts. Clearly the court sat on that case and never said anything until time, two months from the event. And even when they spoke about it, we could see the technicalities there. So where exactly are we headed from here?
The reality in Nigeria today is that Nigeria is officially under state capture. State capture happens when the two other arms of government become subservient of the executive. Okay? Now, it's a very simple issue. It's very simple question should be asked to those who say what the president did in Rivers State was correct, which is, if the country was having a crisis, would the president have suspended himself and installed and appointed a military administrator to start running the country? It's a very simple question. So those who are making that argument should answer. But this is that the one fact remains clear. We must blame the National Assembly. I am one of those who believe the president even had to third majority to have passed that emergency rule. But and the Supreme Court upheld it and said, it's a peculiar issue that they could take, they can handle it in many. By the way, these are things that make most of our young people lose confidence in this democracy, not understand this democracy. Most of them do not know that there are matters of this democracy. So, we must find a way to encourage my contemporaries and the generation younger than my own to understand and believe in this democracy. Because this democracy, they are the one that will keep the fire burning.
I believe we have run out of time already, and we really hope that things will turn out for the better for Africa and indeed our dear country that is already practicing military takeover.
Civilian government, we call it humanistic democracy or illiberal democracy.
Okay, join us next time for more interesting topics and discussions. I do not know if today's will prove to be a debate or a discussion, but we'll find out again next time as we bring you hot and interesting trending topics in the world of politics, both in Africa and in the world. Stay tuned with us, like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Until we meet again next time, have a good night.